Anyway, I watch archaeology sites and geology because it comes up on my screen. And one that comes up over the years constantly, is as it pertains to when were the Americas inhabited, North and South America. Okay, so I'm not an expert, so then what is it that I could possibly be adding? Okay, here it is. That on the archaeology sites, they talk among themselves, and so they don't address certain, what would be considered stupid points. And the biggest stupid point is that in the early man sites that they find, okay, it's known that people were here at least 30,000 years ago. And so they find an early man site like the Chiquita cave down here in Mexico. And they do find arrowheads sitting on the top. And so they dig down. They dig down and think they're going back in time, which it's correct up to a point. But in an archaeological or paleontology site, most regular people like me, I don't think it, but most people think that as they dig down, you're going back to the time of the apes. And so they find arrowheads at these various places, and they picture that, let's say 20,000 years ago, they were apes, barely learning how to make tools, discovering fire, learning how to stand upright. That's not the way it works. That, let's say 100,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, they were as intelligent as we were, if not more so. We have education, and so we fool ourselves into thinking we are in our brains more intelligent. Well, we're not. But this comes up constantly, and nobody ever mentions it. The paleontologists don't mention it because they just consider it so obvious, it's too stupid, we won't even address it. That over in Africa, you know, man started out the Rift Valley, Africa, this, that, Lucy. Dr. Leakey finds Lucy, which was a barely standing up ape and looked like an ape. But then people migrated out, or even, let's say, if they came across to South America, that you're not talking millions of years. That modern humans, let's say, 500,000 years. Okay, so people will find something, not the paleontologists, but regular people, the hikers and stuff. And so they find these rocks, these common rocks, and they go, well, that must be primitive. It must be primitive. Here's a good example. This is a common rock from what I call a Chiquita banana cave. Okay, it's just a goddamn rock. So what they took out was several, I think 400 pounds of rocks. By digging down, they go through them all, and sure enough, you're going to find, you know, stuff like this. And also, recent Indians would use common tools or pick up a rock, chip off the end, and use it as a chopper. Well, that doesn't mean they were apes. I have several hand choppers. I don't want to show them or say where they were from, but I have several hand choppers from relatively modern Indians within, let's say, 500 years. But that doesn't mean they were apes. It was just mean it was something that they used quickly. But it's a big misperception among regular people, not the archaeologists, but among regular people, that as you go down, let's say we've been here 50,000 years. Okay, 50,000 years ago, they were not apes. They were not apes learning to stand up. In the history of the world, no primitive tool has been found in North or South America, such as by a less intelligent ape that was learning to stand up. Not one, not one. The clovis points, Let's say the clovis, if you believe the clovis were the first. Those are absolute masterpieces. They weren't apes. They got here first, and they were apes learning how to make tools. No, they're absolute masterpieces. They're almost impossible to make even to this day by, the people that nap arrowheads and stuff like that. So anyway, that's the point. People got to get it out of their mind that I find some arrowheads in this cave and I go down 6 feet. I'm going back to the dawn of man. The dawn of man. That's not the way it worked. There were no apes that came over here, came across the land bridge, or came over from Africa. There was no race of apes here that were primitive. No skeleton, no nothing has ever been found in the history of the world of like a primitive, a missing link, like a half man, half ape. That was Africa, not here. And so when people pick up these rocks all over the goddamn place, they want to say, well, it must be primitive. They didn't know what they were doing. This must be primitive. But anyway, that's my point. That's my rant. The archaeologists, paleontologists know it. For instance, in the 23,000-year-old footprints in White Sands, New Mexico, of them running around, but they've only found footprints. Okay, and let's say they go over and they find and they can date it, and it turns out these arrowheads match these footprints from 30,000 years ago. It could be, let's say, 50,000. Those points, arrowheads, whatever you want to call them, will look perfectly just like they were made 200 years ago by our Indians. They were not apes. They were not apes.